The throne room of Valora Prime was silent. Hundreds of nobles stood in perfect rows, their pale blue skin glowing under the crystal lights above. They wore robes of silver and gold, and their faces showed no emotion. This was the way of the Valar people. Feelings were weakness. Control was strength. Princess Yuna stood alone in the center of the great hall. She was 23 years old, beautiful by any standard, with silver hair that fell past her shoulders and golden eyes that once sparkled with hope. Today, those eyes were empty. She already knew what the chief medical officer would say. She had known for months. But hearing it spoken aloud, in front of the entire court, was something else entirely. After extensive testing, the medical officer announced, his voice echoing through the chamber, "We have determined that Princess Yuna is genetically incompatible with Velari males. She cannot produce offspring. She is, by our sacred laws, barren." The word hung in the air like poison, barren. In Velawar society, there was no greater shame. Children were everything. Bloodlines were sacred. A princess who could not bear children was not a princess at all. She was nothing. Yuna kept her head high. She did not cry. She had learned long ago that tears meant nothing to her people. Her father, Emperor Kirin, sat on his throne above everyone else, watching her with cold, distant eyes. He said nothing. He did not need to. His silence told her everything. She was no longer his daughter. She was a problem to be solved. The whispers began immediately. Nobles leaned toward each other, speaking in hushed voices that Yuna could still hear. Such a waste. She was beautiful. The bloodline ends with her. I heard she failed with 3 noble suitors. 3. Defective. Completely defective. Yuna's hands trembled at her sides, but she forced them to stay still. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Not here. Not now. Her younger sister Sora stood among the crowd. She was 20 years old, with the same silver hair and golden eyes. But her face held something Yuna's did not: satisfaction. Sora had always lived in Yuna's shadow. She was the second daughter, the spare, the one who would never inherit anything important. But now everything had changed. Yuna caught her sister's eye. Sora looked away quickly, but not before Yuna saw the small smile on her lips. The Emperor finally spoke. His voice was deep and cold, like ice cracking on a frozen lake. "Princess Yuna has brought shame upon our house," he said. "She cannot fulfill her duty to the Empire. Therefore, she will be removed from the line of succession." More whispers. More stares. Yuna felt like she was drowning, but she kept her face calm. However, the Emperor continued, "She may still serve a purpose." Yuna looked up at her father. For a brief moment, she felt hope. Perhaps he would send her to study science, or serve in the military, or do something useful with her life. Perhaps he still saw some value in her. "The Human Confederation has requested a diplomatic marriage," the Emperor said. "They wish to strengthen ties between our species. I have decided to accept their request." The room went completely silent. Even the whispers stopped. A diplomatic marriage to a human. Humans were considered primitive by the Valori. They were emotional, chaotic, and short-lived. Their technology was centuries behind. Their culture was messy and loud. Marrying a Valor princess to a human was not an honor. It was an insult. And Emperor Kirin knew it. He was not giving Yuna a second chance. He was throwing her away. He was telling the entire galaxy that his barren daughter was worth nothing more than a treaty with lesser beings. "The marriage will take place on the human colony world of New Busan," the Emperor announced. "Princess Yuna will depart within the week." Yuna wanted to scream. She wanted to run to her father and beg him to reconsider. She wanted to ask him why he hated her so much for something she could not control. But she did none of these things. She simply bowed her head and said the words that were expected of her. "I accept, Your Majesty." The court was dismissed. Nobles filed out of the throne room already gossiping about the disgraced princess and her shameful fate. Yuna remained standing alone until the last of them had left. Only then did she allow herself to close her eyes and take a shaky breath. Sister, Yuna opened her eyes. Sora stood before her, wearing a look of false sympathy. I am so sorry, Sora said. This must be terrible for you. You do not need to pretend, Yuna replied quietly. I know you are pleased. Sora's mask slipped for just a moment. Her eyes hardened. You were always Father's favorite. You had everything. And now look at you. Married off to some human on a backwater planet. How the mighty have fallen. Yuna said nothing. There was nothing to say. I will take care of your duties here, Sora continued, her voice sweet again. Do not worry about anything. Just enjoy your new life among the primitives. She turned and walked away, her silver robes flowing behind her. Yuna stood alone in the empty throne room for a long time. She looked up at her father's throne, remembering all the times she had stood before it as a child, desperate for his approval. She had studied hard, trained hard, done everything he asked, and none of it mattered. One medical report had erased her entire existence. That night, Yuna packed her belongings. She did not have much. A few dresses. Some books. A small portrait of her mother who had died when Yuna was young. She touched the portrait gently, wondering what her mother would think of all this. I am sorry I failed you, Yuna whispered to the painting. I am sorry I was not enough. The next morning, she boarded a transport ship bound for human space. A small group of servants accompanied her, along with guards who looked at her with pity. No one spoke to her. No one wished her well. She was already forgotten. As the ship lifted off from Valora Prime, Yuna pressed her hand against the window and watched her home world grow smaller and smaller. The golden cities, the crystal towers, the purple forests, all of it fading into the darkness of space. She had spent her entire life trying to be the perfect Valori princess. She had followed every rule, met every expectation, suppressed every emotion, and in the end, it meant nothing. Her own body had betrayed her, and her own people had cast her aside. The journey to New Busan would take 3 weeks. 3 weeks of silence and solitude, traveling through the cold emptiness between stars. Yuna did not know what awaited her on the other side. She imagined a crude, dirty world filled with loud, emotional creatures who would laugh at her or ignore her or treat her like a strange animal. She expected nothing good. She expected to live out her days in quiet misery, forgotten by her people and unwanted by her new husband. She expected her story to end here, but Yuna was wrong. Her story was only beginning, and the humans of New Busan would teach her something the Valori had. It's forgotten long ago. They would teach her how to live. The transport ship landed on New Busan on a bright summer morning. Yuna stepped off the ramp and immediately felt the warm sun on her pale blue skin. The air smelled different here, thick with the scent of flowers and cooking food and something else she could not identify. Life, perhaps. The planet smelled alive. She had expected a primitive wasteland. Instead, she found a bustling colony filled with colorful buildings, green parks, and thousands of humans going about their daily lives. Children ran through the streets laughing. Merchants called out from their stalls. Music played from somewhere nearby, a strange melody that made her want to tap her foot. It was chaos. Beautiful, wonderful chaos. Princess Yuna. She turned to see a man walking toward her. He was tall for a human, with dark hair and kind brown eyes. He wore simple clothes, dark pants, and a white shirt. Nothing like the elaborate robes of Valori nobility. He smiled at her, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. I am Tai-Ho, he said. I have been assigned as your liaison. And, if you agree, your husband. Yuna stared at him. She had expected someone old and ugly, someone the humans did not want and were happy to give away. But Tai-Ho looked young, perhaps 30 years old, and there was a warmth in his face that confused her. You do not seem upset, Yuna said carefully. Being forced to marry an alien must be unpleasant for you. Tai-Ho laughed softly. I was not forced. I volunteered. Why would you do such a thing? He shrugged. I believe in building bridges between our peoples. And honestly, I was curious. I have never met a Valori before. I wanted to understand your culture, your world. He paused, looking at her with those gentle eyes. And I wanted to help someone who might need a friend. Yuna did not know how to respond. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever offered friendship without expecting something in return. Taiho led her through the colony to a modest house near the edge of town. It was small compared to her palace chambers on Valora Prime, but it was clean and comfortable. There were plants on the windowsill, books on the shelves, and a kitchen that smelled like fresh bread. "This is your home now," Taiho said. "Our home, if you want it to be. But there is no pressure. You can have your own room, your own space. We will move at whatever pace you are comfortable with." Yuna touched the soft fabric of the curtains, still trying to understand this strange man. "You do not want to claim me? Assert your rights as my husband." Taiho's expression grew serious. "You are not property, Yuna. You are a person. Whatever your father or your people told you, that is the truth. You have the right to choose what happens to your own life." She felt something crack inside her chest. Something that had been frozen for a very long time. The marriage ceremony took place a week later. It was nothing like Vellery weddings, which were grand political events lasting several days. Instead, Taiho and Yuna stood in a small garden with a handful of witnesses. A local official read some simple words about partnership and respect. They exchanged rings, plain silver bands, with no jewels or engravings. "That is it?" Yuna asked afterward. "We are married?" "That is it," Taiho confirmed. "Unless you want a bigger celebration?" "No." Yuna looked at the ring on her finger. "No, this is nice." The first few months were difficult. Yuna did not know how to live like a human. She did not understand their jokes or their customs. She was confused by their loud emotions, their easy laughter, their willingness to cry in public. On Valora Prime, such displays were forbidden. Here, they were everywhere. But Taiho was patient. He explained things without making her feel stupid. He cooked meals and taught her to use the strange human appliances. He showed her how to watch movies and listened when she asked questions about the confusing plots. One evening, he took her to a night market in the center of the colony. The streets were filled with food stalls, musicians, and people dancing. Yuna had never seen anything like it. "Try this," Taiho said, handing her something wrapped in paper. She took a bite, and her eyes went wide. It was sweet and savory at the same time, with textures she had never experienced before. "What is this?" she asked. "Street food," Taiho said, grinning. "Good, right?" "It is incredible." That night, walking through the crowded market with sauce on her fingers and music in her ears, Yuna felt something she had not felt in years. She felt happy. She also met Mina around this time. Dr. Mina ran the colony's medical clinic and was unlike any doctor Yuna had ever known. She was loud, opinionated, and completely unimpressed by royalty. "So you are the alien princess everyone talks about," Mina said during their first meeting. "You do not look very scary." "I am not trying to be scary," Yuna replied. "Good, because I am your doctor now, and I do not scare easily. Take off your shirt so I can check your vitals." Yuna was shocked by her bluntness, but she found herself liking the human woman. Mina treated her like a normal patient, not a curiosity or a political symbol. She asked about Yuna's health, her diet, her sleep patterns. She made jokes and complained about her other patients. She was real in a way that Valori nobles never were. Mina said one day, "You smile more now than when you first arrived." Yuna touched her face, surprised. "Do I?" "Yes. It looks good on you. Keep doing it." As the months passed, Yuna's relationship with Taiho deepened. They talked for hours about their different cultures, their hopes, their fears. Taiho told her about his childhood on Earth, about losing his parents in an accident, about joining the diplomatic corps to find purpose. Yuna told him about her cold childhood, her distant father, her years of trying to be perfect. "You do not need to be perfect," Taiho said one night, as they sat on their porch watching the stars. "You just need to be you." "I do not know who that is anymore," Yuna admitted. "Then we will figure it out together." He took her hand. His skin was warm against hers, and for the first time since arriving on this strange human world, Yuna did not feel alone. She began to realize something that terrified her. She was falling in love with her husband, not because she had to, not because it was arranged, but because Taiho saw her, really saw her in a way no one ever had before. He did not care about her bloodline or her title or her ability to produce heirs. He cared about her laugh, her thoughts, her dreams. One night, Yuna reached for him in the darkness of their bedroom, not out of duty, but out of desire. Taiho held her gently, asking if she was sure, giving her every chance to change her mind. But she did not want to change her mind. She wanted him, and in that moment, wrapped in the arms of a human she had been taught to look down upon, Yuna felt more loved than she ever had in her entire life. She was finally home. 6 months had passed since. Yuna arrived on New Busan, and she barely recognized herself anymore. The cold, controlled princess who had stepped off that transport ship was gone. In her place was a woman who laughed at dinner, who danced badly at festivals, who kissed her husband good morning without thinking about politics or duty. She was happy, truly, genuinely happy. But something was wrong. It started small. A little dizziness when she stood up too fast. A strange feeling in her stomach that came and went. She thought maybe she had eaten something bad, or perhaps human food did not agree with Velore biology. She ignored it at first, not wanting to make a fuss. Then came the morning sickness. Yuna woke up one day and barely made it to the bathroom before emptying her stomach. Taiho rushed in after her, holding her silver hair back and rubbing her shoulders. "We need to see Mina," he said, worry clear in his voice. "This has been going on for days." "I am fine," Yuna insisted weakly. "It is probably just a virus." "You are not fine. Please, let me take you to the clinic." She wanted to argue, but another wave of nausea hit her, and she could only nod. Dr. Mina was her usual blunt self when they arrived. She ran test after test, taking blood samples and scanning Yuna with various machines. Taiho sat in the waiting room, pacing back and forth, until Mina came out and told him to sit down before he wore a hole in the floor. Finally, after what felt like hours, Mina called them both into her office. Her face was strange, a mixture of shock and excitement that Yuna had never seen before. "What is wrong with me?" Yuna asked. "Is it serious?" Mina leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Wrong? Nothing is wrong. In fact, something is very, very right." She paused, clearly enjoying the moment. "Yuna, you're pregnant." The world stopped. Yuna heard the words, but they did not make sense. They could not make sense. She was barren. The Velore Medical Council had declared it officially. She could not have children. It was impossible. "That cannot be correct," Yuna said, her voice shaking. "I am infertile. I was tested dozens of times." "I am incompatible with Velore males," Mina interrupted. "You were incompatible with Velore males. But Taiho is not Velore. He is human." She pulled up some charts on her screen. "I have been studying your biology since you arrived. Velore genetics are extremely specialized. You evolved on a single planet with very little genetic diversity. Your species became too pure, for lack of a better word." She turned the screen so Yuna could see. "Humans are the opposite. We are messy, chaotic. Our genetics are incredibly diverse because we adapted to so many different environments. That diversity makes us compatible with species that cannot reproduce with each other." Yuna stared at the screen, trying to understand. "You are saying—" "I am saying you were never broken, Yuna. You were never defective. Your body just needed a different key." Mina smiled. "And human DNA was that key." What? Taiho had been silent this whole time. Now he stepped forward, his face pale. "She is. We are. We are going to have a baby?" "Yes," Mina confirmed. "About 8 weeks along, from what I can tell. The pregnancy appears healthy so far, though I will need to monitor it closely since this is the first Velore-human hybrid we know of." Yuna's hands moved to her stomach without her telling them to. There was life inside her. A child? Her child. Everything she had been told about herself, that she was worthless, she was defective, that she could never be a mother, all of it was a lie. The tears came before she could stop them. Not the controlled hidden tears of a Valor princess, but loud, messy human tears that streamed down her face and shook her entire body. Tai-ho caught her in his arms, holding her tight as she sobbed. "I thought there was something wrong with me," she cried. "I thought I was broken. My whole life I believed I was broken." "You are not broken," Tai-ho whispered into her hair. "You were never broken. You are perfect. You are amazing. And we are going to have a baby." That night, they sat together on their small porch, looking up at the stars. Yuna could not stop touching her stomach, still unable to believe what was happening inside her. "I want to name her Nari," Yuna said suddenly. "If it is a girl?" Tai-ho looked at her. "Nari, that is beautiful." "What does it mean?" "It does not mean anything. I just like how it sounds." She smiled, a real smile that lit up her whole face. "Is that okay? To choose a name just because you like it?" Tai-ho laughed and kissed her forehead. "That is the best reason to choose anything." They talked about the future for hours. What their child might look like. Would she have blue skin or tan? Silver hair or dark? What kind of person would she become growing up between two worlds? They made plans and dreamed dreams. Two people who had been given away by their societies, now building something new together. But reality could not be ignored forever. News of Yuna's pregnancy spread quickly through the colony. Humans were excited and curious about the first hybrid child. Scientists requested interviews. Journalists wrote articles. The story of the barren princess who found love and fertility among the humans became famous across multiple systems, and, inevitably, that news reached Valora Prime. Yuna received the first communication from her home world 2 weeks after her pregnancy was confirmed. It was not from her father or her sister. It was from a minor noble she barely remembered, congratulating her and asking politely invasive questions about her condition. More messages followed. Some were curious. Some were hostile. Some accused her of lying, of faking the pregnancy, of betraying her species by mixing blood with inferior beings. And then came the official communication from the Imperial Palace. Yuna read it with trembling hands. The message was formal and cold, written in the style of royal decrees. It informed her that her pregnancy was a matter of state concern, that the child she carried had potential claim to the Valori throne, that a delegation would be sent to discuss the situation. "Discuss the situation," Yuna repeated bitterly. "They mean take control of it." Tai-ho read the message over her shoulder. His jaw tightened. "They cannot force you to do anything. You are a citizen of New Busan now. The Human Confederation protects its people." "You do not know my father," Yuna said quietly. "He does not ask. He takes—" She placed her hand on her growing belly, feeling the small life inside her. For months, she had been happy. She had forgotten about Valora Prime, about her cold father and jealous sister, about the court that had thrown her away like garbage. She had built a new life here among the humans, but the past was coming for her, and Yuna knew with absolute certainty that she would burn the entire galaxy down before she let anyone take her child away. The Valor delegation arrived on New Busan 3 weeks later. Their ship was enormous, a gleaming silver vessel that blocked out the sun as it descended through the clouds. The humans of the colony gathered in the streets to watch, whispering nervously among themselves. No Valori warship had ever come this close to their world before. Yuna watched from her window, one hand resting on her belly. She was 4 months pregnant now, and her stomach had begun to show. The child inside her kicked sometimes, small movements that reminded her why she had to be strong. Ow. "They brought a battle cruiser," Tai-ho observed grimly, standing beside her. "For a diplomatic mission. My father does not believe in diplomacy," Yuna replied. "He believes in power." The delegation was led by High Minister Ginyo, one of Emperor Kirin's most loyal servants. He was an older Valori with cold gray eyes and a permanent frown. Yuna remembered him from her childhood. He had always looked at her like she was a piece of furniture, something to be used and discarded. They met in the colony's government building, a modest structure compared to the grand halls of Valora Prime. Governor Hannah represented New Busan. a tough woman in her 60s who had spent her life fighting for the colony's independence. She did not seem impressed by the Valori visitors. "Hi, Minister Ginho Governor," Hannah said, her voice flat. "Welcome to New Busan. I hope your journey was pleasant." Jinho ignored her completely. His eyes locked onto Yuna, scanning her body with obvious interest. "Princess Yune, you look different?" "I am different," Yune replied calmly. "This world has changed me indeed." His gaze dropped to her stomach. "And apparently, it has made the impossible possible. The Emperor was most surprised to learn of your condition." "I imagine he was." Jinho's expression hardened. "Let us not waste time with pleasantries. I am here to deliver the Emperor's decree." He pulled out a formal document, sealed with the imperial crest. "Princess Yuna is ordered to return to Valora Prime immediately. Her pregnancy is a matter of imperial concern. The child she carries has potential claim to the throne and must be raised according to Valorate traditions." "And my husband?" Yuna asked. "What about him?" "The human is irrelevant. Your marriage will be annulled, and you will be assigned a proper Valori consort once you return home." Taiho stepped forward, his fists clenched. "Yuna is not going anywhere she does not want to go." Jinho looked at him for the first time, his lip curling with disgust. "You will not speak unless spoken to, human." "This is a matter between Valori nobility. This is a matter of kidnapping," Governor Hannah interjected. "Yuna is a legal resident of New Busan and a citizen of the Human Confederation. You cannot simply take her against her will. The Emperor's will supersede your petty local laws. It's not on our soil. It does not." The meeting descended into argument. Ginho made threats about trade sanctions and military action. Governor Hannah reminded him that the Human Confederation had its own military and would not take kindly to Valori aggression. Back and forth they went, neither side willing to give ground. Through it all, Yuna remained silent, watching the High Minister with growing anger. He spoke about her like she was not even in the room, like she was a possession to be retrieved, not a person, with her own thoughts and feelings. It was exactly how she had been treated her entire life on Valora Prime. Finally, she had enough. "No." The single word cut through the argument like a blade. Everyone turned to look at her. "No." Ginho repeated, his eyes narrowing. "You dare refuse the Emperor's decree?" "I dare." Yuna stood up straight, her hand protective over her belly. "I will not return to Valora Prime. I will not annul my marriage. And I will not surrender my child to be raised by people who threw me away like garbage." Jinho's face flushed with anger. "You forget your place, princess. You are still a subject of the Empire. The Emperor can do nothing to me." Yuna's voice was steady, stronger than she had ever heard it. "I am no longer the frightened girl he exiled. I am a wife. I am going to be a mother, and I am done letting him control my life." "This is treason," Jinho hissed. "Then let it be treason." Yuna met his gaze without flinching. "Go back to my father and tell him I said no. Tell him his barren, worthless daughter has found everything she ever wanted among the humans he despises. Tell him I am happy. And tell him that if he wants my child, he will have to come take her himself." Ginho stared at her for a long moment. Then, without another word, he turned and marched out of the building, his delegation following behind. That night, Yuna could not sleep. She sat in the living room of her small house, staring at the wall, replaying the confrontation in her mind. Taiho sat beside her, holding her hand. "You were amazing today," he said softly. "I was terrified," Yuna admitted. "I am still terrified. My father is not a man who accepts rejection. Whatever comes, we will face it together." Her communicator beeped suddenly. A private message, encrypted and untraceable. Yuna opened it cautiously, expecting another threat from the Empire. Instead, it was from Sorcerer. The message read, "Father is furious. He is gathering support among the noble houses to declare your child illegitimate and demand your forcible return. But there is more. He is planning something worse. I do not know the details yet, but I have heard whispers of military action. Be careful. Be prepared. And Yuna, I am sorry. For everything. Why, UNA read the message 3 times, trying to understand. Sora had never apologized for anything in her life. Was this a trick? A trap? Or had something changed? What does it say? Taiho asked. Yuna showed him the message. His face grew serious. We need to tell Governor Hannah, he said. If the Valori are planning military action, the Confederation needs to know. It will mean war, Yuna whispered. My people against yours. Because of me, not because of you. Taiho cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. Because of your father's pride. Because of a system that treats people as property. You did nothing wrong, Yuna. You fell in love. You started a family. Those are not crimes. She leaned into his touch, drawing strength from his warmth. What if the Confederation decides I am not worth the trouble? What if they hand me over to keep the peace? They will not. How can you be sure? Taiho smiled. Because humans are stubborn, and we do not abandon our own. The next few weeks were tense. Governor Hannah shared Sora's warning with the Confederation leadership, and military ships began arriving in the new Busan system. The Valori cruiser remained in orbit, watching and waiting. Both sides prepared for a conflict no one wanted, but everyone expected. Yuna spent her days surrounded by guards, unable to leave her home without an escort. She hated feeling like a prisoner again, but she understood the necessity. Her child kicked inside her, growing stronger every day, completely unaware of the storm gathering around her. One evening, as Yuna sat reading by the window, she felt the baby move particularly strongly. She placed both hands on her belly, feeling the small life inside her respond to her touch. I will protect you, she whispered. No matter what happens, no matter who tries to take you away. You are mine. You are ours. And no one will ever make you feel worthless the way they made me feel. The baby kicked again, as if in agreement. Yuna looked out at the stars, somewhere among which her father was plotting and scheming. She had spent her whole life running from him, hiding from him, trying to earn his approval. But she was done running now. If Emperor Kirin wanted a fight, she would give him one, and she would win. The labor lasted 18 hours. Yuna gripped Taiho's hand so hard she thought she might break his fingers. But he never complained, never left her side. Dr. Mina worked with calm efficiency, monitoring both mother and child through the unprecedented birth. When it was finally over, when the first cries of a newborn filled the room, Yuna forgot all the pain. She forgot the fear and the exhaustion and the uncertainty. All she could see was the tiny creature Mina placed in her arms, a beautiful baby girl with pale lavender skin, dark hair and golden eyes that blinked up at her with innocent wonder. Nari, Yuna breathed, tears streaming down her face. Hello, my little Nari. Taiho leaned over them both, his own eyes wet. He touched his daughter's tiny hand, and her small fingers wrapped around his thumb. She is perfect, he whispered. She is absolutely perfect. The news of the hybrid princess's birth spread across the galaxy within hours. Scientists called it a breakthrough. Diplomats called it a complication. Emperor Kirin called an emergency session of the imperial court, but Yuna barely noticed any of it. For the first few weeks, her entire universe consisted of feeding times and diaper changes and watching her daughter sleep. Nari was healthy and strong, crying loudly when she was hungry and calming instantly in her mother's arms. She has your stubbornness, Taiho joked one morning. And your appetite, Yuna replied, smiling, but peace could not last forever. A month after Nari's birth, Governor Hannah requested a meeting with Yuna and Taiho. Her face was grim when they arrived at her office. The Valori situation is getting worse, she said. Emperor Kirin has convinced the noble houses that your daughter is a threat to the purity of the imperial bloodline. They are demanding she be declared illegitimate and stripped of any claim to succession. That is fine by me, Yuna said. I want nothing from the empire. The problem is, they want more than just a declaration. Hannah pulled up a report on her screen. Intelligence suggests the Emperor is preparing to use your daughter as an excuse for military action. He is framing her existence as an act of genetic warfare by humanity. Taiho's jaw tightened. That is insane. Politics often is. Hannah looked at Yuna. There is a way to prevent this. If you go to Valora Prime yourself, as an ambassador of the Human Confederation, and address the Imperial Court directly, you might be able to change the narrative. You want her to walk into the lion's den? Taiho demanded. With our daughter? I want her to show the galaxy who she really is. Hannah's voice softened. The Valerie people only know the story their emperor tells them, that you are a traitor, that your child is an abomination. If they see you in person, speaking your truth, it might change things. Yuna was quiet for a long moment. She thought about her father's cold eyes, about the throne room where she had been humiliated, about all the nobles who had whispered behind her back. The idea of returning there filled her with dread. But she also thought about Nari, about the galaxy her daughter would grow up in, about the war that might come if someone did not do something brave. I will go, Yuna said finally. Taiho grabbed her arm. Yuna, I have to. She looked at him, her golden eyes fierce. I am tired of hiding. I am tired of letting my father define who I am. It is time to tell my own story. 3 weeks later, Yuna's ship entered Velori space. She was officially listed as an ambassador of the Human Confederation, which gave her a diplomatic immunity and the right to address the Imperial Court. Taiho walked beside her, and in her arms she held Nari. Now, 2 months old and blissfully unaware of where they were going, the throne room of Valora. Prime was exactly as Yuna remembered it, cold, vast, and filled with hundreds of nobles in silver and gold robes. They stared at her as she walked down the central aisle, her faces showing shock, disgust, and curiosity in equal measure. Emperor Kirin sat on his throne, watching her approach. He looked older than she remembered, his blue skin faded to gray, his eyes more sunken. But his expression was the same, cold, calculating, utterly without warmth. Daughter, he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. You dare return after defying my direct order? I am not here as your daughter, Yuna replied, her voice steady. I am here as Ambassador Yuna of the Human Confederation. You are here as a traitor and a disgrace. The Emperor stood, his robes flowing around him, and you bring that creature into our sacred halls. Yuna held Nari closer. The baby stirred but did not wake. This creature is your granddaughter. Her name is Nari, and she is not a disgrace. She is a miracle. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Yuna took a deep breath and began to speak. You all know who I am. I am the barren princess, the failure, the girl who was thrown away because her body could not do what your society demanded. She paused, letting her words sink in. But I was never barren. I was never broken. The problem was not me. The problem was you. The murmurs grew louder. Emperor Kirin's face darkened with fury, but Yuna continued. Our species is dying. You all know this, even if no one speaks of it openly. Fertility rates have dropped for 6 generations. Genetic disorders are increasing. The obsession with purity, with keeping bloodlines clean, is killing us. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of nobles young and old. I was told I could not have children because I was defective. But the truth is, I could not have children with Valori males, because we have become too genetically similar. Our DNA has no room to adapt. She held up Nari so everyone could see. Human DNA is different. Humans are messy and diverse and chaotic. And that chaos is exactly what our species needs to survive. Enough. Emperor Kirin bellowed. I will not listen to this propaganda. Guards seize her. The guards moved forward. Yuna's heart pounded, but she did not run. She stood her ground, holding her daughter, facing the soldiers her father had sent to take her. But before they could reach her, another voice rang out. Stop. The guards froze. Everyone turned to see Sora pushing through the crowd, her silver robes billowing behind her. She walked to stand beside Yuna, her chin held high. Sister? The Emperor said, his voice dangerous. What is the meaning of this? The meaning is that Yuna is right, Sora said clearly. I have seen the population reports. I've talked to the scientists. We are dying, Father. And the only person offering a solution is the daughter you threw away. The throne room erupted in chaos. Noble houses began arguing among themselves. Some supported the emperor. Others looked at Yuna and Nari with new eyes, seeing not a disgrace, but a possibility. Young Valori pushed forward, asking questions about human compatibility. Scientists spoke up, confirming what Yuna had said about declining fertility rates. Emperor Kirin screamed for order. But no one was listening anymore. The narrative he had built, the story of the traitor princess and her abomination child, was crumbling around him. In the end, he had no choice but to relent. The court voted to recognize Nari as a legitimate heir. The threats of war faded. And for the first time in Velori history, the door was open to partnerships with humans. That evening, Yuna stood on the balcony of the palace where she had grown up. The purple sun was setting over the crystal towers, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. Taiho stood beside her, his arm around her waist. Nari slept peacefully in her carrier. "I never thought I would come back here," Yuna said softly. "Are you okay?" "I think so." She looked down at her daughter, at the tiny face that combined two worlds. "I used to hate this place. I used to hate myself for not being good enough for it. But now," she smiled, "now I realize I was never the problem. They were." Sora approached them quietly. She looked nervous, uncertain, emotions Yuna had never seen on her sister's face before. "I am sorry," Sora said, "for everything I said and did. For enjoying your pain. I was jealous and cruel, and you deserved better." Yuna studied her sister for a long moment. Then she reached out and took Sora's hand. "We were both victims of this system. Both of us tried to survive in our own way. I forgive you." Tears welled in Sora's golden eyes. She nodded, unable to speak, and squeezed Yuna's hand.